It's the early hours of June 22nd, 2025. The world for a moment is at peace. The only movement in this corner of Russian-occupied Ukraine is the gentle swaying of tall grass in the night breeze. But on a lonely stretch of track, history is about to be rewritten. Not by missiles, not by tanks, but by 4 drones smaller than a suitcase. This is a story of technology, ingenuity, and a quiet, clinical brutality that defines the wars of our century. It's the story of how a handful of engineers, soldiers, and partisans flipped the script on Russian military might, using tools you could buy online. Russia's rails, the arteries of empire. To grasp the scale of what's about to unfold, we need to understand the battlefield beneath the surface. For more than a century, Russia has waged its wars by rail. The iron lines crossing its vast landscape have carried armies from the Carpathians to the Pacific. They fueled victories against Napoleon, Hitler, and more recently, the grinding conflict in Ukraine. Trains aren't just a convenience, they're the backbone of Russian logistics. Every artillery shell, every T-90 tank, every precious liter of diesel fueling the front line starts its journey on a train. If you break these arteries, you don't just slow down the army, you give your enemy an aneurysm. Ukraine's generals understand this in their bones, but it wasn't always this way. Back in 2014, Ukrainian defense doctrine was almost medieval, linear, defensive, and reactive. Russian little green men rolled across Crimea and Donbass with barely a hiccup. The West, for the most part, watched. But as the war dragged on, a new generation of Ukrainian officers, raised on NATO war games and Silicon Valley innovation, began to adapt. They saw that you don't have to destroy every tank to win a battle. Sometimes, you just have to make sure the tanks can't move. The dawn of drone warfare. The revolution began with hobby drones, rigged to drop hand grenades into trenches. In 2016, this was a desperate, clever trick, crude, effective, but unreliable. By 2020, Ukrainian teams were flying recon missions, mapping enemy lines and identifying targets for artillery. Fast forward to 2025, and drones have become the scalpel of Ukrainian strategy. No longer toys, these are networked, AI-assisted modular war machines, fitted with high-definition optics, custom warheads, and communications tech designed to survive the densest Russian jamming. Every battle, every skirmish, every ambush is now filmed, analyzed, and shared among operators across the country in real time. Mistakes are cataloged, victories are dissected. The learning cycle is relentless, and each iteration makes the next attack more deadly. And tonight, the world is about to see how far this doctrine has come. The target, a train loaded with war. Somewhere deep inside Kursk Oblast, a Russian supply train, 12 fuel tankers, a single locomotive, and 840 tons of diesel rumbles slowly westward, bound for the depots that feed Russia's advance. Inside the cab, the engineer is oblivious to the unfolding drama. He checks his schedule, notes the time, and listens to the steady hum of the engine. To him, this is just another run. But for the men and women of Ukraine's Kabul 9 Special Operations Unit, it is the culmination of 4 days of relentless surveillance. They have watched this train leave the Rostovan depot. They have tracked every stop, every shift change, every acceleration and pause. They have mapped the air defense zones, timed the gaps, and chosen this particular stretch of track for a reason. It is as vulnerable as the Russians ever get. Vocal 9? Kabul 9, masters of the silent war. 35 kilometers away, inside a cramped and dimly lit van, the core of Kabul 9 waits. On their screens, the train is a sequence of glowing white and gray blobs, the engine a 47-degree Celsius beacon, the tankers lined up like pearls, each one radiating the heat of the volatile fuel within. The atmosphere is tense but clinical. Operators speak in short, precise phrases. Each member knows their job. One pilot for each drone, a navigator, a communications tech, a mission commander overseeing everything. Their eyes flick from thermal feeds to encrypted Starlink links confirming that their drones, modified DJI quadcopters, are loitering in the perfect positions. Every movement, every order is logged and checked. They know that Russian electronic warfare teams are hunting for them. The window for this strike is narrow. One error, and the train escapes or the drones are lost. The stakes: 4 days for 4 minutes. Kabul 9's mission wasn't built overnight. Through a web of partisan informants, railway workers, sympathetic civilians, even disgruntled Russian soldiers, Ukrainian intelligence pieced together the train's exact route. Using encrypted phones, they tracked its speed and stops, feeding that data back to headquarters. Military analysts crunched the numbers. Each tanker, 70 tons of diesel. 12 tankers, 840 tons. That's enough for 3 armored battalions, hundreds of vehicles to operate for 10 days. 10 days of lost fuel isn't just lost ground. It means a stalled advance, panic at HQ, and sometimes an entire sector going dark. Disrupt a train, and you set off a chain reaction. Evolution of the weapon, from toy to terror. To outsiders, the drone's Kabul 9 launches look almost innocuous, but inside each is a universe of upgrades. Batteries swapped for custom, long-life packs. Optics replaced with 56-die zoom lenses, allowing identification of targets from 5 kilometers away. Radios built around frequency-hopping tech that changes channels 1,500 times a second, making them nearly impossible to jam. And beneath each drone, a PG-7VL-shaped charge warhead. Originally built to pierce tank armor, it can turn a fuel tanker's steel wall into shrapnel and ignite the contents in a single, cataclysmic blast. The total cost? About $8,000 per drone. The expected damage? Millions, plus weeks of logistical paralysis. Why not missiles? Why not bombers? You might wonder, why not use a cruise missile or a bomber? Here's the answer: cost, risk, and precision. Missiles are expensive, scarce, and hard to aim at moving trains. Aircraft risk interception, and the fallout from using them deep in Russian-occupied territory could trigger unpredictable escalation. But drones? They fly low, dodging radar. They can circle above for an hour, waiting for the perfect shot. And with fiber optic tethers, they can even operate without emitting radio signals, immune to electronic warfare. In modern war, the smallest weapon can be the most dangerous, if it's smart. Electronic warfare? Cat and mouse, 40 AM. The train enters the kill zone. Inside the Russian command post, analysts suddenly notice abnormal electromagnetic noise. A Lear-3 electronic warfare truck, Russia's best answer to the drone threat, powers up and begins broadcasting jamming signals. First, it blasts every frequency it can, hoping to drown out the drone's communications. When that fails, it switches to spot jamming, targeting 2.4 GHz and 5.8 GHz bands used by most consumer drones. But Kabul 9 anticipated this. Their frequency-hopping radios skip ahead, like a ghost jumping from shadow to shadow. Frustrated, the Lear-3 operators tried GPS spoofing, flooding the air with false coordinates, trying to trick the drones into flying off course or crashing. But inside each drone, solid-state gyroscopes and inertial navigation units quietly measure movement, cross-checking every calculation against real motion. You can fool a GPS receiver, but you can't fool physics. The secret weapon, the fiber optic tether. As the attack begins, the lead drone unspools a thread, no thicker than a human hair, of fiber optic cable. This physical tether connects drone and operator directly, transmitting real-time HD video, control commands, and telemetry at gigabit speeds. Russian jammers search in vain for radio signals to block. But you can't jam glass. There's a price. Fiber optic control limits the drone's maneuverability, and if the cable snags on a tree or signal post, it can restrict movement. But tonight, the trade-off is worth it. Guaranteed, unjammable control, crucial for a mission where a single mistake could waste months of planning. The inferno begins. The first drone dives at tanker number 4, warhead armed. It hits with surgical precision, detonating at the perfect angle. The shaped charge punches a 15mm hole through steel at 2800 degrees Celsius. Inside, 70 tons of diesel vaporize, exploding into a blinding orange fireball that lights up the night for kilometers. The tanker's venting systems, meant to equalize pressure during loading, now become conduits for destruction. Within seconds, tankers number 3 and 5 are blazing. Desperate countermeasures. Russian crewmen spot the second drone. Shouting, they open fire with AK-74s. The drones are small, fast, and agile. Tracer rounds streak through the darkness, but the drones bob and weave, guided by operators watching thermal feeds from dozens of kilometers away. Drone number 1's warhead, though, doesn't fully detonate. Its pilot, thinking fast, steers the flaming wreckage into a growing pool of diesel, triggering a secondary fireball. Above, the heat from the fire creates its own weather, violent updrafts and swirling hurricane-force winds. Drone number 3 is buffeted, struggling to maintain course. Drone number 2's fiber optic cable catches on a signal post, forcing the pilot to fly in tight circles. Abort or attack? The operators push forward. The killing blows. Drone number 2 plunges into tanker number 8. Drone number 3 slams into tanker number 11. The nearly simultaneous explosions amplify each other, forming a chain reaction that engulfs half the train in flame. Temperatures spike past 1200 degrees Celsius. Steel rails begin to bend and twist. With only 8% battery left, drone number 4 makes its run, straight for the locomotive. The warhead cuts through the engine block, killing the train forever. The human side, what it feels like for the Russian crew, the world has transformed in seconds. The engineer, thrown to the floor by the shockwave, crawls to the emergency brake. Flames leap skyward. Radio calls are lost in static and panic. The steel shell meant to protect them becomes a furnace. For the Kabul 9 team, victory is quiet. No celebration, only relief. They quickly wipe their systems, collect their gear, and move to a secondary site. The drone's physical tethers, now stretched across fields, must be gathered or hidden before dawn. The aftermath ripples through the war. The cost of this attack? Ukrainian investment, $32,000, 4 drones, including upgrades and warheads. Russian losses, $2.4 million in rail stock, $600,000 in fuel, weeks of lost supply. 3 armored battalions, nearly 300 vehicles stranded for 10 days. But the true impact is psychological. Russian commanders scramble to adjust. Supply trains are rerouted, delayed, or canceled. Morale sinks as rumors of invisible Ukrainian superweapons spread through the ranks. On Ukrainian social media, the footage is analyzed frame by frame. Telegram channels erupt in celebration. Western analysts dissect every detail, seeking clues to the future of warfare. VWE1P, lessons for the world. What does this attack mean for the future? It's a warning shot, not just to Russia, but to every military that clings to 20th century doctrine. 1. Logistics is the true front line. If your fuel can be destroyed by a $10,000 drone, your tanks don't matter. 2. Electronic warfare is a cat-and-mouse game. Every defense begets a new offense. The cycle is relentless. 3. Small teams, big impact. With ingenuity, training, and data, a handful of operators can cause chaos far behind enemy lines. 4. The battlefield is everywhere. No part of the rear is safe. A train, a fuel depot, a command center, they're all targets, all the time. Bookmark the GV8 political fallout. Within days, the story makes global headlines. Russia downplays the loss, but satellite images tell the truth. Burned out train cars, twisted rails, a black scar across the countryside. NATO planners take notes. Ukrainian engineers field new requests for better drones, better encryption, and deeper integration with Western systems. China, Iran, and every military observer in the world pay close attention. If the mighty Russian war machine can be stalled by 4 drones and a handful of operators, no supply line is safe. The night modern war changed forever. The night of June 22, 2025, will be studied in war colleges for decades to come. It was a moment when the lines between civilian and military technology blurred beyond recognition. When a handful of off-the-shelf drones, modified with nothing more than skill, daring, and $32,000 in parts, wiped out millions in enemy assets. It proved that victory doesn't always go to the side with the most tanks, the most planes, or the biggest bombs. Sometimes, victory belongs to those who see the invisible, who strike at the weak points, and who have the courage to try something initially. In a war ruled by steel and fire, sometimes the smallest shadow in the sky is the most dangerous. Not a missile, not a bomb, just a whisper of electricity, a glint of plastic, and the mind of a determined operator. The future of warfare is here, and tonight, it rides on rails.